Sir, you need to move to the back. This section is for our premium passengers only. The flight attendant's voice carried across the cabin as cameras started rolling. Arthur Lee looked up from his phone, his expression unchanged. He wore faded jeans, a gray hoodie, and carried a worn leather briefcase. Nothing about him screamed wealth or power. To everyone watching, he was just another passenger being told he didn't belong. The woman standing over him, Eleanor Vance, tapped her tablet impatiently. "Sir, did you hear me? You're in the wrong section." Arthur held up his boarding pass. "Seat 1A, first class." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "That has to be a mistake. Let me see your ID." Around them, 12 passengers had their phones out. Social media user R Skywatcher was already live tweeting the confrontation. Have you ever watched someone's entire world change in 45 minutes? Because these real-life stories and black stories show how touching stories can become life stories that reshape entire industries. The departure board above Gate 17 flashed red. Flight 321 to Gateway City, boarding complete in 37 minutes. Eleanor examined Arthur's boarding pass like it was counterfeit currency. Her colleague Olivia approached from the galley. "Problem?" Olivia whispered, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "This gentleman seems confused about his seat assignment," Eleanor replied, her tone suggesting Arthur was either lying or incompetent. Arthur remained seated, buckled in, briefcase at his feet. "Ma'am, I understand there might be confusion. Could you please check your system?" Eleanor's fingers flew across her tablet. She frowned, tapped it again, then shook her head. "Sir, records show you purchased an economy ticket. You'll need to move to your correct seat in coach." "That's incorrect," Arthur said quietly. He pulled out his phone and showed her his mobile boarding pass. "First class, seat 1A, paid for 3 weeks ago." An elderly white man in seat 2A leaned forward. "Son, maybe you should just take your real seat. No need to cause trouble." Eleanor nodded approvingly. "Exactly, sir. Are you sure you didn't mean to book coach? These mistakes happen when people aren't familiar with the booking process." The condescension hung in the air like smoke. Arthur's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He reached into his briefcase and retrieved a Platinum Global Airways status card, placing it on the tray table. 140,000 miles flown with Global Airways, he said. Platinum status for 6 consecutive years. Eleanor barely glanced at it. "Anyone can get those cards online now, sir. I'm going to need you to gather your belongings and move to your assigned seat." Skywatcher's fingers moved rapidly across her phone screen. Live black passenger being systematically humiliated on Global. Airways Flight 321, this is insane. Global discrimination. The tweet was retweeted 47 times in 2 minutes. Captain William Davis emerged from the cockpit. At 52, he commanded respect through presence alone. His silver hair was perfectly styled. Uniform pressed to military precision. "What's the situation?" he asked Eleanor, not looking at Arthur. "Passenger in the wrong seat won't move to coach where he belongs." Davis sized up Arthur with a glance. Hoodie, jeans, sneakers. His assessment was immediate and wrong. "Sir, you're holding up departure. I need you to take your correct seat immediately." Arthur looked up calmly. "Captain, I'm in my correct seat. First class 1A. Here's my boarding pass, my ID, and my frequent flyer card." Davis didn't look at any of them. "Son, I've been flying for 15 years. I know when someone's trying to scam an upgrade. Eleanor, call ground security." The passengers, in first class, shifted uncomfortably. A woman in 3B started recording with her phone. A businessman in 4A looked up from his laptop, frowning. Arthur pulled out his phone and began recording. "For the record, it's 2:47 p.m. Flight 321. I'm being asked to leave my paid first-class seat despite having proper documentation." "Sir, put that phone away," Davis commanded. "You're being disruptive." "I'm documenting discrimination," Arthur replied evenly. Eleanor was already on her radio. "Ground control, we need security at Gate 17. Passenger refusing to comply with crew instructions." The man in 2A shook his head. "Just move to coach, buddy. You're making this harder than it needs to be." But the woman in 3B spoke up. "Wait, he showed you his boarding pass. Why aren't you checking it?" Eleanor's face reddened. "Ma'am, please don't interfere. This gentleman clearly purchased an economy ticket and is trying to get a free upgrade." "How do you know that?" the woman pressed. Experience, Eleanor replied curtly. Arthur made a phone call. The conversation was brief, his voice low. Yeah, I'm running late. Start without me. I'll handle this personally. Davis overheard. Handle what, sir? Or who are you calling? Arthur didn't answer. He was taking notes on his phone, documenting every word, every action. Skywatcher's follower count jumped by 300 as her live stream gained traction. Comments flooded in. This is 2025. How is this still happening? Sue them. Record everything. The gate agent's voice echoed through the terminal. Final boarding call for Flight 321 to Gateway City. All remaining passengers please board immediately. Two security officers approached. Officer Miller, a 20-year veteran, and Officer Kim, no relation to Arthur despite the shared surname. What's the problem? Miller asked. Davis pointed at Arthur. Passenger in wrong seat refusing to move, being disruptive. Miller looked at the scene. A well-dressed man sitting calmly in first class, surrounded by crew members and passengers, with phones out. Sir, can I see your boarding pass? Arthur handed it over without protest. Miller examined it carefully, compared it to Arthur's ID, then looked at his radio. This shows first-class seat 1A, Miller said to Davis. It's clearly fraudulent, Eleanor interjected. He's trying to scam an upgrade. Miller looked at her skeptically. Ma'am, these boarding passes come directly from, how would it be fraudulent? Eleanor faltered. Well, these people know how to manipulate the system. The words hung in the air. Even passengers who hadn't been paying attention looked up. These people weren't subtle. Arthur remained perfectly still, but his eyes met Miller's. The security officer had heard those words before and understood their meaning. Sir, Miller said to Arthur, would you mind stepping off the aircraft for a moment just to verify everything with the gate agent? It was a reasonable request, delivered respectfully. Arthur nodded and stood. As he gathered his briefcase, his phone buzzed. A text message flashed briefly on the screen before he closed it. The woman in 3B caught a glimpse. Board meeting moved to Conference Room A emergency session. She frowned, wondering what kind of emergency board meeting a coach, passenger would know about. The departure board now showed Flight 321 delayed 23 minutes. Ground Supervisor Brenda Hayes arrived at Gate 17 with purposeful strides. She'd been with Global Airways for 12 years, working her way up from baggage handler to supervisor. She prided herself on handling difficult situations. What's the holdup? She asked Miller. Passenger verification, he replied, handing her Arthur's documents. Brenda examined everything with theatrical thoroughness. Boarding pass, ID, frequent flyer card. She looked from the documents to Arthur, then back to the documents. Mr. Lee, these appear to be in order. However, given the crew's concerns about your behavior, I think it's best if we reseat you in coach for this flight. Arthur's voice remained level. What behavior? I was sitting quietly in my assigned seat. You are being argumentative with the flight crew. I was providing documentation when they claimed I was in the wrong seat. Brenda's expression hardened. Sir, arguing with me won't help your cause. You can take your assigned coach seat or you can take the next flight. Those are your options. Back on the plane, Skywatcher's live stream had exploded. The Global Airways discrimination was trending. Her viewer count hit 1,500 and climbing. Her commentary was running live. They forced him off the plane now. This man has a first-class ticket, showed multiple forms of ID, and they're treating him like a criminal. This is what discrimination looks like in 2025. Comments poured, in faster than she could read them. Save this video as evidence. What's his name? He needs a lawyer. Global Airways stock is going to tank. Someone find out who this guy is. Inside the terminal, other passengers from the flight had gathered to watch. Several were recording. A teenage girl was streaming on. TikTok. A businessman was updating his LinkedIn feed. Arthur looked at his watch. A habit, perhaps. But Brenda noticed it was expensive. Very expensive. More than her monthly salary. Sir, I need your decision. Coach seat or next flight? May I speak with your district manager? Arthur asked. Brenda laughed. The district manager? Sir, I'm the senior supervisor on duty. I have full authority here. I understand your position, Arthur replied. However, I'd like to escalate this to your district manager. You can file a complaint online like everyone else. Several first-class passengers had come out to watch. The woman from 3B, now identified as Dr. Sophia Carter, stepped forward. "Excuse me, but I was on that plane." This man was sitting quietly in his seat. He showed his boarding pass, his ID, everything. Why exactly is he being removed? Brenda turned to her. "Ma'am, this is between us and Mr. Lee. Please return to your seat." "I'm a paying customer too," Dr. Carter replied, "and I'm witnessing what appears to be discrimination." A businessman from first class joined her. "I saw the whole thing. The flight attendant never checked his documents properly." "Victoria, are you familiar with Section 12.3 of our shareholder agreement?" Another pause. "The material incident clause?" "Correct. Discrimination against passengers constitutes a material incident that triggers a governance review." Dr. Carter whispered to the businessman, "He's not just complaining, he's activating legal procedures." "Arthur," Victoria's voice came through the speaker. "What do you need?" "First, I need your flight crew to understand that they've created a significant legal and public relations crisis for Global Airways." Captain Davis was staring at the phone like it might explode. "Second, I need immediate corrective action that demonstrates Global Airways' commitment to equal treatment of all passengers. Whatever you need." Arthur looked around the crowd at the phone still recording, at Brenda's pale face, at Eleanor, who looked like she might faint. "And third, Victoria, I need you to understand that this isn't about me. It's about the thousands of passengers who experience discrimination every year but don't have the resources or platform to fight back." The crowd was silent now. Even the live stream comments had slowed as people absorbed what they were witnessing. "Arthur, I'm authorizing whatever actions you deem appropriate. Full authority." Arthur nodded. "Thank you. I'll have recommendations within the hour." He ended the call and looked around the gate area. 50 people were staring at him. Multiple live streams were broadcasting to thousands more. "There's one more thing you should know," Arthur said. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a final document. This one was different, more official-looking, with multiple signatures and seals. Last year, Global Airways received an anonymous donation of $500,000 to fund diversity and inclusion training. He held up the document. "The donation came from the Apex Foundation, my foundation." Revelation hit like a thunderclap. Eleanor actually gasped out loud. "I've been trying to help this airline improve its culture for over a year," Arthur continued. "Today I experienced firsthand why that help is desperately needed." Skywatcher's voice came through her live stream chat. "Are you getting this? This man has been trying to help the airline, and they discriminated against him. This is unreal." Arthur closed his briefcase with deliberate precision. "Now shall we discuss how to ensure this never happens again?" Brenda's phone rang again. This time it was the Global Airways legal department. The real work was about to begin. Conference Room A at Global Airways headquarters was normally used for quarterly reviews and budget meetings. Today, it had become the epicenter of a corporate crisis. Victoria Grant sat at the head of the mahogany table, surrounded by 8 board members, the company's legal team, and her senior vice presidents. The room's video wall displayed 3 feeds: the live stream from Gate 17, Global Airways stock chart showing a steady decline, and a Twitter analytics dashboard tracking Global Airways discrimination. "Patch Mr. Lee through to the main screen," Victoria ordered. Arthur appeared on the 75-inch display, standing calmly in the gate area with Brenda Hayes beside him. The crowd of passengers was still gathered, phones still recording. "Arthur, you have the floor," Victoria said. Arthur had positioned himself so the crowd could hear both sides of the conversation. This wasn't going to be a private settlement discussion. This was going to be transparency in real time. "Thank you, Victoria. Before we discuss solutions, I think the board needs to understand the full scope of what happened here." He gestured to Eleanor Vance, who had reluctantly joined the group at the gate podium. "Ms. Vance, would you please tell the board what you said when you first approached me?" Eleanor's voice was barely audible. I told you that section was for premium passengers only, despite the fact that I was holding a first-class boarding pass. Yes. And when I showed you my platinum frequent flyer card, I said, anyone could get those cards online. Board member Daniel Kim leaned forward. Ms. Vance, what made you assume Mr. Lee's documents were fraudulent? The question hung in the air. Eleanor looked around desperately, seeking an escape from a truth everyone already knew. Arthur answered for her. I'll save Ms. Vance the discomfort of answering. She made assumptions based on my appearance. A black man in casual clothes couldn't possibly belong in first class. Victoria rubbed her temples. Arthur, what are your immediate demands? Let me present the facts first, then we'll discuss solutions. Arthur pulled out his tablet and connected it to his phone's hotspot. Within seconds, he was sharing his screen with the conference room. Global Airways Financial Performance Q4 2024. Total passengers 47.2 million. Customer satisfaction rating 3.2 out of 5. Industry average 3. The board members were taking notes furiously on discrimination complaints filed with the Department of Transportation against Global Airways in 2024. That's 43% higher than the industry average. Victoria's face was grim. Arthur said, we weren't aware the numbers were that high because your complaint resolution system is designed to discourage reporting, not encourage it. Arthur pulled up another slide. Apex Innovations Annual Travel Spending Breakdown. Global Airways, $1.2 million. Northwind Airlines, $800,000. Horizon Air, $650,000. The implications were clear. Global Airways was getting the largest share of a multi-million-dollar corporate travel budget. However, Arthur continued, given today's incident, Apex Innovations will be reviewing all vendor relationships for alignment with our corporate values. Board member Maria Rodriguez spoke up. Mr. Lee, what would constitute appropriate resolution from your perspective? Arthur looked around the gate area at the passengers still watching and at the live streams still broadcasting. First, immediate termination of all personnel involved in the discriminatory actions. Eleanor Vance's knees buckled slightly and Captain Davis closed his eyes. Second, implementation of comprehensive bias training for all customer-facing staff within 30 days. Victoria nodded in agreement. Third, establishment of an anonymous reporting system for discrimination incidents managed by a third-party organization. Also agreed. Fourth, creation of a $500,000 fund dedicated to diversity and inclusion initiatives. The board members exchanged glances. $500,000 was significant, but not catastrophic. And fifth, Arthur continued, a public apology from Global Airways acknowledging systemic failures in equal treatment of passengers. Victoria paused. A public apology could expose us to significant legal liability. Arthur replied, Victoria, your current legal liability is already significant. There are approximately 4,000 people watching this conversation live. Your stock has dropped 2.1% in the last 2 hours. Your choice is between controlled transparency and uncontrolled crisis. Legal counsel whispered something in Victoria's ear. She nodded grimly. All conditions accepted, she announced. The crowd at the gate erupted in applause, and Skywatcher's comment section exploded with celebration emojis. But Arthur wasn't finished. There's one additional requirement, he said. The conference room fell silent. I want real-time implementation, not promises, not future commitments. Changes implemented within 72 hours. That's impossible, protested VP of Operations Robert Thompson. Union agreements, legal reviews, system updates? Arthur interrupted. Robert, I've reviewed your operational capabilities. When weather emergencies require rapid schedule changes, you can reorganize your entire system in 6 hours. When you have the will, you have the way. Victoria leaned back in her chair. What specifically do you need in 72 hours? Arthur pulled up another document on his tablet. Miss Vance and Captain Davis terminated within 24 hours. Replacement training. Materials developed and deployed within 48 hours. Anonymous reporting system operational within 72 hours. And if we can't meet that timeline, Arthur looked directly into the camera. Then Apex Innovations will divest our Global Airways holdings and recommend that our network of partner companies do the same. The threat was devastating. Apex Innovations wasn't just a large investor. They were connected to dozens of other corporations that collectively represented millions in annual travel spending. Board member Jessica Walsh asked, "Mr. Lee, how do we know these changes will be sufficient?" "You don't," Arthur replied, "but you'll have quarterly reviews with independent auditors to track progress, full transparency, public reporting." Victoria looked around the conference room. Her board members were nodding. The legal team was scribbling notes frantically. The stock price continued its decline. "Arthur, we accept all conditions." The crowd at the gate erupted again. Several passengers were wiping away tears. Dr. Carter was shaking her head in amazement. But Arthur still wasn't done. "There's one final element," he said. "Personal accountability." Victoria's expression tightened. "What do you mean?" "Executive compensation should be tied to diversity and inclusion metrics, starting with your compensation, Victoria." The conference room went dead silent. 20% of executive bonuses tied to measurable improvements in equal treatment outcomes, quarterly assessments, public reporting. Victoria stared at the screen for a long moment. Around the conference table, 8 board members waited for her response. "Agreed," she said finally. Arthur nodded. "Then we have a framework for moving forward." He looked around the gate area one more time. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize again for the delay. However, I hope you can see that sometimes delays serve a greater purpose." She just assumed he was in the wrong seat. Brenda felt the situation slipping away from her. More passengers were gathering. Phones were everywhere. She needed to reassert control. "Sir," she said to Arthur, "you can take the coach seat I'm offering, or you can leave the airport. Those are your only options." Arthur pulled out his phone and made another call. This one lasted 47 seconds. His voice was too low for most people to hear, but Dr. Carter was close enough to catch fragments. Urgency. Board meeting, conference room A. Now Dr. Carter frowned. Board meeting? Arthur ended the call and addressed the gathered crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this delay. I know you all want to get to Gateway City on time." His tone was different now, more authoritative. Several passengers noticed the change. Brenda sensed something shifting. "Sir, who are you calling?" "My office," Arthur replied simply. "Your office?" Arthur reached into his briefcase and withdrew a business card holder. He selected one card and handed it to Brenda. She read it, and her face went pale. "Arthur Lee, Chief Executive Officer, Apex Innovations." The gathered passengers pressed closer, trying to see. Dr. Carter read over Brenda's shoulder and gasped. "Oh my God," she whispered. The businessman from first class pulled out his phone and started Googling. His eyes widened as he read. "Holy shit," he muttered. "Apex Innovations, they're worth billions." Skywatcher caught the exchange on her live. "Stream. Wait. Did someone just say billions? Chat, what's happening? Who is Apex Innovations?" Her viewers were already researching. Apex Innovations just announced a $2.4 billion revenue year. They own like 847 companies. This guy isn't just some random passenger. Global Airways is about to get sued into oblivion. Brenda stared at the business card. Her hands were shaking. "Slightly. Mr. Lee, this doesn't change anything. You were being disruptive." But her voice lacked conviction now. Arthur looked at his watch again. "In about 3 minutes, you're going to receive a call from your headquarters. I suggest you answer it." "What kind of call?" "The kind that comes from your board of directors." The crowd had grown to about 30 people. Airport security was trying to manage the situation, but the Live streams were multiplying. Global Airways discrimination had over 2,000 tweets now. Captain Davis appeared looking flustered. "What's going on out here? We need to depart." Miller filled him in. Quietly, Davis's expression changed as he listened. "CEO of what?" Davis asked. "Apex Innovations," Miller replied. "Major corporation, billions in revenue." Davis looked at Arthur with new eyes. The hoodie and jeans didn't look so casual anymore. They looked like the outfit of someone who didn't need to impress anyone. Brenda's radio crackled. "Supervisor, Hayes, please contact headquarters immediately. Priority 1. She looked at Arthur, who checked his watch again. "Right on schedule," he said quietly. Dr. Carter stepped closer to Arthur. "Sir, I'm sorry this happened to you. This is completely unacceptable." "Thank you," Arthur replied. "But this isn't about me anymore." "What do you mean?" Arthur looked around at the crowd, at the phones recording everything, at the airport security, trying to manage a situation that had grown beyond their control. "This is about making sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." Skywatcher, the live stream viewer count hit 3,000. Major news outlets were starting to pick up the story. Global Airways' stock price, which had been stable all day, dropped by 1.2% in the last 15 minutes. Brenda's radio crackled again. "Supervisor Hayes, CEO Victoria Grant needs to speak with you immediately." Brenda looked at Arthur, then at the business card in her hand, then at the crowd of witnesses recording everything. "This is about to get very interesting," Dr. Carter muttered to the businessman beside her. Arthur opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. Inside were documents that would change everything. "Actually," he said to Brenda, "there's something else you should know." The crowd leaned in, sensing that whatever came next would be the moment everything changed. Arthur's phone buzzed with a text. "Board is assembled, awaiting your call." He looked up at Brenda, at Captain Davis, at Eleanor, who had joined them from the plane. "Shall we discuss this inside? I think you're going to want privacy for this conversation." The gate area had transformed into an impromptu amphitheater. Passengers sat on chairs, stood against windows, and leaned against pillars. The live streams had multiplied. Skywatcher now had 4,000 viewers. 3 other passengers were streaming simultaneously. Arthur stood calmly in the center, his briefcase open, documents arranged methodically on a nearby chair. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying easily across the space, "I want to apologize for the delay. I know many of you have connections to make, families to see, business to conduct." Brenda Hayes stood frozen. Victoria Grant's direct number displayed on her phone screen. She hadn't made the call yet. "Before we resolve this situation," Arthur continued, "I think everyone deserves to understand what's really happening here." He pulled out a leather portfolio and opened it. The first document was a stock ownership certificate. 6 months ago, Apex Innovations acquired a 23% stake in Global Airways. The words hit the crowd like a physical force. Gasps, muttered curses, someone saying, "No way," loud enough for everyone to hear. Captain Davis stepped forward. "That's impossible. I would have heard about a major acquisition like that." Arthur looked at him calmly. "Captain Davis, you've been with Global Airways for 15 years. Excellent safety record, by the way. I've reviewed your file." Davis's face went white. "You've reviewed my file?" Apex Innovations reviews all key personnel files for companies in our investment portfolio. Standard due diligence. Eleanor Vance, who had been lurking at the edge of the crowd, suddenly understood the magnitude of what had just happened. She'd discriminated against someone who effectively owned nearly a quarter of the airline. Dr. Carter was recording with her phone, but she lowered it slightly. "Mr. Lee, are you saying you own part of Global Airways?" 23%, Arthur confirmed, which makes Apex Innovations the second largest shareholder. He pulled out another document. Global Airways Fiscal Year 2024. Total revenue, $8.2 billion. Apex Innovations investment, $1.9 billion. The businessman from first class was frantically taking notes. This is incredible. This guy isn't just wealthy. He's one of the owners of the airline. Skywatcher, the stream was exploding with comments. He owns the airline. This is the best plot twist ever. Global Airways is so screwed. Someone's getting fired in real time. Arthur reached into his briefcase again. There's more context you should have. He produced a thick folder labeled Global Airways Corporate Account Summary. Apex Innovations. Books approximately 847 flights per year with Global Airways. Our annual travel expenditure with this airline, $1.2 million. Brenda finally found her voice. Mr. Lee, I had no idea. Of course you didn't, Arthur interrupted gently. That's the point. A customer's treatment shouldn't depend on their net worth or their position. It should be consistent and respectful. He opened the folder and pulled out several pages. My personal account with Global Airways, platinum status for 6 consecutive years, 340,000 miles flown. Last year alone, I took 63 flights with this airline. Captain Davis was staring at the documents like they might disappear if he blinked. Sir, we had no way of knowing. Captain, that's exactly the problem, Arthur replied. You made assumptions based on my appearance. You never checked my credentials. You called security without verifying the facts. Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. Mr. Lee, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. Vance, Arthur said, consulting. A document. 8 years with Global Airways. Generally positive performance reviews. 2 customer complaints in your file, both involving passengers of color. The implication hung in the air like a blade. Dr. Carter stepped closer. Mr. Lee, what happens now? Arthur looked at his watch. In about 90 seconds, Brenda's going to get an other call from headquarters because right now there's an emergency board meeting happening in Global Airways. As if on cue, Brenda's phone rang. The caller ID showed Victoria Grant, CEO. Arthur nodded to her. You should take that. Put it on speaker. Brenda's hands were shaking as she answered. Miss Grant? Brenda, is Arthur Lee with you? The CEO's voice was tense. Yes, ma'am. Put him on the phone now. Arthur stepped forward. Hello, Victoria. Arthur, I just got out of an emergency board meeting. What the hell is happening at Gate 17? The crowd pressed closer. This was better than any movie. Victoria, I'm on Flight 321 to Gateway City. I was denied service and removed from my paid first-class seat due to what I can only characterize as racial discrimination. Silence on the other end of the call. Then please tell me you're joking. I'm afraid not. The incident has been live-streamed by multiple passengers. It's trending on social media. Your stock is down 1.4% in the last hour. Jesus Christ. Arthur pulled out his phone and showed the screen to the crowd. Multiple social media feeds were visible, all showing the hashtag #OurGlobalAirways discrimination trending. The crowd broke into sustained applause. Brenda Hayes stepped forward. Mr. Lee, what happens now? Arthur smiled for the first time since the incident began. Now, Brenda, we fix the system and we make sure every passenger is treated with dignity and respect. He looked back at the camera. Victoria, I'll expect the implementation timeline by email within 4 hours. You'll have it in 2, she replied. Arthur closed his tablet and picked up his briefcase. Now, I believe Flight 321 was supposed to depart 45 minutes ago. Shall we get these passengers to the... The transformation was immediate. Brenda was issuing instructions to her staff. Eleanor Vance was being escorted away by airport security. Captain Davis was having his credentials reviewed by supervisors. A new flight crew was already being assembled. Addressing another address, Skywatcher addressed her live stream audience chat. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. One man just changed an entire airline's policies in real time. As Arthur finally boarded his flight in seat 1A first class, Dr. Carter leaned over from 3B. Mr. Lee, as incredible as it sounds, how did you stay so calm through all of that? Arthur settled into his seat and opened his laptop. Dr. Carter said, "Anger is temporary. Systems change is permanent. I'd rather build something lasting than just vent frustration." The plane pushed back from the gate 53 minutes late, but it was carrying more than passengers to Gateway City. It was carrying the promise of change. Hours later, Arthur Lee sat in his district capital office reviewing implementation reports from Global Airways. His assistant, David Santos, had arranged the documents chronologically on his mahogany desk. The termination letters were executed yesterday, David reported. Eleanor Vance and Captain Davis were dismissed with cause. Brenda Hayes was demoted to training coordinator and will undergo mandatory sensitivity counseling. Arthur nodded, reviewing the documentation. What about the replacement protocols? New crew training materials went live this morning. Every Global Airways employee will complete 8 hours of bias recognition training within the next 30 days. The anonymous reporting system launched at 6 a.m. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Global Airways stock rebounds after swift discrimination response. Shares up 3.2%. The market had responded positively to decisive action. Investors appreciated companies that addressed problems quickly rather than letting them fester. Victoria Grant had appeared on national business news that morning announcing the Dignity in the Skies initiative. The interview had been watched 847,000 times in 6 hours. Mr. Lee's experience was unacceptable, she had said directly to the camera, but his response showed us how to turn a failure into an opportunity for meaningful change. The anonymous reporting system had already logged its first complaint. A passenger on Flight 892 reporting discriminatory treatment by ground staff in Mountain View. The complaint was being investigated by a third-party firm within hours, not weeks. Arthur's computer chimed with an incoming video call. Victoria Grant appeared on screen looking considerably more relaxed than she had 3 days ago. "Arthur, I wanted to give you the first quarterly report personally." She shared her screen, showing a comprehensive dashboard of metrics. Discrimination complaints down 67% in just 3 days. Customer satisfaction surveys show marked improvement. Most importantly, we've had 12 employees proactively report bias incidents they've witnessed. Arthur leaned back in his chair. That's the real victory, Victoria, when employees feel empowered to speak up. The training program has been requested by 6 other airlines. We're licensing it through a nonprofit organization, with proceeds funding diversity scholarships. Excellent. What about the executive compensation metrics? Victoria smiled. Board approved unanimously. 20% of all C-suite bonuses are now tied to diversity and inclusion outcomes. First quarterly review is next month. Arthur pulled up his own metrics dashboard. Apex Innovations tracked their vendor relationships meticulously. Global Airways is back to being our preferred airline partner, he confirmed. Apex Innovations will increase our travel spending by 15% this quarter. That's wonderful news, Arthur. I have to ask, how did you know exactly what levers to pull? Arthur considered the question. Victoria, I've been discriminated against before, but I've also been in boardrooms for 20 years. I understand how corporations make decisions. The key is aligning moral imperatives with business incentives. The whole incident has become a Harvard Business School case study. Victoria mentioned they're calling it stakeholder activism in real time. After ending the call, Arthur walked to his office window overlooking Central Lake. The view reminded him why he loved District Capital, a city built by immigrants and outsiders who refuse to accept limitations. His phone rang. Dr. Sophia Carter from Flight 321. Mr. Lee, I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from your foundation's website. Not at all, Dr. Carter. How can I help you? I wanted to tell you that what you did inspired me to take action in my own workplace, Dr. Carter said. I'm head of emergency medicine at Central City Hospital. We've had our own issues with bias and patient treatment. I presented your Global Airways case to our board last week. Arthur smiled. What was their response? We are implementing a similar anonymous reporting system for bias incidents, and we're requiring all staff to complete unconscious bias training. Your approach, using data and systematic change rather than individual blame, really resonated. That's exactly what needs to happen, Arthur replied. One incident becomes a catalyst for broader change. The medical community is calling it the Lee Protocol, using documented discrimination incidents to drive institutional reform rather than just individual punishment. After Dr. Carter hung up, Arthur reviewed the broader impact metrics his team had compiled. The hashtag #OurDignityInskis had been used 47,000 times across social media platforms. But more importantly, it had spawned 12 copycat initiatives at other transportation companies. Regional bus lines had announced their own bias training program. Commuter Rail had hired a chief diversity officer. 3 major hotel chains had implemented anonymous reporting systems. His assistant brought in a stack of letters from passengers who had experienced similar discrimination. Each letter shared a story, thanked Arthur for speaking up, and many included documentation of their own incidents. One letter stood out. It was from a young black woman named Maya Evans, a recent MBA graduate. Mr. Lee, I was on Continental Air Flight 237 last month and experienced almost identical treatment to yours, but I didn't have your resources or platform. I just endured it and filed a complaint that went nowhere. Watching your live stream showed me that discrimination doesn't have to be accepted silently. I'm now working with the Civil Liberties Union to document systematic bias in airline treatment. Thank you for showing that change is possible. Maya's letter became part of a growing file. Her case would become part of a larger class action lawsuit that would ultimately force industry-wide changes. The true measure of success wasn't just global airways reforms. It was the ripple effect across an entire industry. 3 months later, the Department of Transportation announced new federal guidelines requiring airlines to track and publicly report discrimination complaints. The regulations were nicknamed the Global Airways Rules after the incident that sparked them. Arthur received a call from Transportation Secretary Daniel Jones, no relation to the terminated captain. Mr. Lee, your Global Airways case provided the political momentum we needed to implement comprehensive anti-discrimination regulations. 6 major airlines have already adopted your recommended protocols voluntarily rather than wait for federal mandates. The Apex Foundation had expanded its focus to transportation equality, funding legal representation for passengers facing discrimination. In 6 months, they had supported 43 cases across airlines, bus companies, and ride-share services. Arthur often reflected on the moment when Eleanor Vance first told him to move to the back of the plane. That single incident of discrimination had become a catalyst for systematic change affecting millions of travelers. But the most satisfying outcome was personal. Last month, Arthur had flown Global Airways Flight 321 again, the same route, the same aircraft type. The flight attendant, a young black man named Thomas, welcomed him aboard with genuine respect. Mr. Lee, it's an honor to have you flying with us today. Is there anything I can do to make your flight more comfortable? Arthur looked around the first-class cabin and noticed the diversity of passengers, different races, ages, clothing styles, all being treated with equal professionalism and respect. Thomas, you're already doing everything perfectly. That was the real victory, not the corporate policy changes or the media attention or the stock price recovery. It was the simple fact that the next passenger who looked like Arthur or didn't look like him would be treated with dignity. The transformation was complete. 2 years after Flight 321, Arthur Lee stood at the podium of the National Equity Museum in River City, delivering the keynote address for their annual Transportation Equality Summit. The auditorium was packed with 800 attendees, more seats than airline executives, civil rights lawyers, government officials, and activists. but Arthur could see beyond the crowd to the millions watching the live stream. Change doesn't require violence, he told the audience. It doesn't require lawsuits or protests or public shaming. It requires documentation, leverage, and systematic thinking. He clicked to his first slide, a graph showing discrimination complaints across all major airlines. Since the Global Airways incident, airline discrimination complaints have dropped by 71% industry-wide, not because discrimination disappeared overnight, but because airlines implemented systems to prevent it. The graph showed a dramatic decline starting in late 2025, continuing through 2026 and into 2027. This is what happens when you change systems instead of just punishing individuals. The audience included Eleanor Vance, the former flight attendant who had triggered the entire incident. After her termination from Global Airways, she had undergone extensive bias training and now worked as a diversity consultant, helping other companies avoid the mistakes she had made. She raised her hand during the Q&A session. "Mr. Lee, I'm Eleanor Vance. I was the flight attendant on Flight 321. A murmur went through the crowd. This was unexpected. Eleanor Arthur said warmly, "Thank you for being here. I wanted to publicly apologize again, but more importantly, I wanted to thank you. Your response changed my life. I understand now how my unconscious biases hurt people. I've spent 2 years learning to be better." The crowd erupted in applause. This was the real power of systematic change. It could transform perpetrators into advocates. Eleanor, your courage in facing your mistakes and working to prevent others from making them is exactly what this movement needs. Arthur clicked to his final slide, a photo of Maya Evans, the young woman who had written to him after her own discrimination experience. Maya Evans used documentation and legal advocacy to win a landmark settlement against National Air. That settlement funded bias training for 47,000 airline employees across the industry. The audience stood and applauded as Maya walked onto the stage. Maya's case proved that you don't need to be a CEO or a major shareholder to create change. You just need to be willing to document injustice and demand accountability. Arthur looked directly into the live stream camera. These touching stories remind us that change happens when ordinary people refuse to accept discrimination as normal. When we document injustice systematically, when we demand accountability from institutions, when we use our economic power strategically. He paused, letting the words sink in. Every person watching this has experienced unfair treatment or witnessed it happening to others. Your stories matter. Your documentation matters. The live stream chat was flowing with personal experiences, commitments to action, and expressions of gratitude. If you've witnessed discrimination in transportation, document it, record it, report it, share your real-life stories because these Black stories and life stories become the foundation for systematic change. Arthur concluded with a direct challenge. Don't just watch injustice happen. Don't just feel bad about it. Do something about it. Use the tools we've developed. Use the systems we've built. Help us create a world where everyone travels with dignity. The screen displayed the Transportation Equality Foundation's website and reporting tools. This video tells your friends about these resources. Subscribe to stay informed about our progress because together we can ensure that what happened on Flight 321 was the last time, not just another time. The applause continued for 3 full minutes as the live stream viewer count hit 150,000. Change had become contagious.